Hi, everyone. Welcome to the You Don't Own Me podcast. I'm your host, Juliana J. And today we're just kind of following up on self-care. So we did do a podcast on self-care, but there's no visuals for that. And you can find that on our podcast. You'll see it. It's Self-Care 1. So this is kind of the follow-up to self-care. And in Self-Care 1, I was talking about the fact that I didn't really understand what self-care was until recently. I thought it was just more tasks and things I would, do, like cleaning under the bed or, like self-care was like taking care of these tasks I needed to do, but that I was putting off. Or what was another weird one I thought was self-care? Learning about things about my job. I mean, can you even imagine that that's what I thought self-care was? I mean, I guess maybe for somebody it's self-care, but certainly not for me. I would not be doing that for self-care. And I was also talking about the fact that when I first learned about self-care, I thought all these things that women were doing for self-care, like, maybe facials or you putting a mask on or doing their nails or something like that isn't really anything I would want to do. In fact, that wouldn't bring me any kind of joy, I guess. I would be more like waiting for it to end. So I would do it, but I'd be waiting for it to end the whole time. And so it's kind of hard to figure out what self-care is. I'm not quite sure if I even truly know at this point what self-care is, because there's all these blurred lines, like, is running self-care or is it working out? I know that's taking care of yourself because you're working out, but do you consider running a chore something you have to do because you're afraid of not looking good or a heart attack or something? Is yoga self-care if you're dreading it because it's your workout? Is reading a book self-care if it's giving you a panic attack because you're checking out and you're worried about what's happening and you're not doing anything about it, and now you're not doing these chores you're supposed to be doing? So if you're reading this book for self-care, but you aren't doing the things you need to do, and that's creating a lot of anxiety, like, now I don't have time to do what I need to do, and so I'm not going to be able to do the laundry, and what does that mean? And, is these things you're doing for self-care causing more stress and anxiety? And what exactly is self-care? And can you do self-care while multitasking? For example, one thing I thought was sort of self-care for me, and, actually I kind of think it still is I used to really kind of like it when I was listening to a podcast I was really engaged in, or I was doing stuff like, a new album dropped today and I'm really excited about listening to it, or something new, or I'm listening to this book and it's getting really, really good, and I can't wait to go back and commute home for an hour so that I can listen to that stuff, and sometimes I would even, kind of like, oh, please let there be some traffic, because I don't want to stop. I have an hour and 20 minutes more left in this book, but, my commute will only be an hour, whatever, So is that self-care? Because I'm doing a chore I don't like, I'm commuting, but I'm listening to something that I really enjoy. So could that be self-care while I'm doing something I don't want to be doing? And stuff like that. Like, what if I'm reading, which I consider really enjoyable, even though I'm dyslexic, so it's, kind of a weird thing. But do I enjoy it because if I'm reading something, I have to read to learn something. And maybe it's something I don't really want to learn. Like I would like to magically know how to use um, Adobe Audition, but so in learning about it, is that self-care or is only reading fiction self-care? So what are all these lines that are blurred? And there's all these things that different genders do for self-care. That what if you don't like any of those things? Like, I don't like any of those things, really. Like, I might do them if somebody wanted to do something like that with me, but I'm not going to think like, oh, I really love facials. So even though I think facials are cool, don't get me wrong. I think they're great. I probably should have some because, I could look a little better, but I just feel so anxious while I'm getting stuff like that done. I can't wait to leave. It's just the anxiety of being there too long. So what is self-care for people? Um I think that it's really a personal thing. I don't think there's a cookie cutter thing for it. So I had to stop for a second because while I was doing this podcast, somebody was texting me asking me if I wanted to go to this yoga class that it's really hard. Don't get me wrong. It is so hard. I'm a little scared of it, but also I'm really enjoying going to the yoga class and supporting that teacher. And I really like what she's doing. And I just love the whole philosophy that she brings into the class and all of this. So is that self-care? If I really enjoy it, I'm enjoying supporting the teacher, but also it's really, really hard. And it is exercise that I need to do so many times a week or whatever in my own mind. Like in my own mind, I'm kind of a freak about exercise. Like I need to do it this many days a week and for this many hours. And if I'm like a minute short of any workout, I'm like freaked about it, and I'm really working on trying to get better at that because I really got psycho about it. And I had to limit myself like, no, you can't work out 6 days a week. No, not for 2 hours every day. No. And it's not like I'm in total shape or I look like I'm in total shape. I just got weird about it. Right. So now I don't know because I got weird about it. Is this self-care or is it a workout? I don't know, but I'm going to Powerful Yin Flow tonight because it is great, but also hard. So, is that self-care? Let me know what you think. I don't claim to have any answers whatsoever at all. I'm just saying like, this is kind of, thoughts that I have been having about what exactly is self-care to me. What is it to others? And I don't want to do a mask or paint my nails or anything like that. And here's another thing: I like building stuff. Like I sometimes build really big light fixtures and things like that. Is that self-care? Because I like it. I definitely think art is self-care. Okay, sounds good, says the person. We are going to yoga. Yay. Anyway, I definitely think art is self-care. Making art is self-care. But what if you're an artist and that's your job? Is that self-care? No, probably not. Right? It's probably something else. Is getting coffee at the coffee house self-care? If you really, really love it or not? That's my quandary about self-care. I'm sorry. Now the dog is snoring behind me and let's see. I don't know if you could see him. See? Anyway, it's a her. I don't know why I called her a him. There's just a him down there, but it's on the floor. Anyway, so and if you do something like take a nap for self-care, but it freaks you out because now your timeline's all messed up and you can't get stuff done, is that self-care? Because now you've caused more anxiety to yourself. I don't know. And then how often should you do self-care? Like when does it become maybe being somebody who's annoying. Like, what if you're always doing self-care? No, I'm sorry, I can't go out with you because I'm doing self-care. No, I'm going to go take a nap even though you're cleaning the house because I'm going to do some self-care and not help you clean the house because I'm going to take a nap or whatever. I don't know. It's kind of I think it's a term people throw out, but then nobody has the tools to actually figure out what that is or, So for me, I've defined it as it's self-care if I'm stoked on it. I'm looking forward to it. I'm jazzed. I can't wait to go. It's going to be great. I enjoy it. Then I can also learn something, but it can also be self-care. And I decided that, yeah, when I get crazy and I'm listening to something while I'm driving and I'm really loving it, that can be self-care, because I could so easily have chosen to listen to some, I don't know, how to use some work thing better, I could be doing that, or like, the news, which I don't think the news should be self-care for anyone. The news, I can definitely say, is not self-care. You don't listen to this unless you're listening to something that is maybe a feel-good story or something like that. Perhaps that could be self-care. Like, you're going to listen to Fresh Air or something, or whatever that show is where they play new albums and stuff like that on NPR or something like that, or I don't know, some other thing, that might be news-esque, but is also enjoyable to you. I think maybe that's self-care, but straight up news, not self-care. No, not at all. I also think like some people get more anxiety stepping out for a minute than they do if they stayed in the game, right? So like for me, for example, if I took a nap during the day for self-care, unless I'd been up like for 3 days straight or something like that, if I took a nap in the middle of the day, that would give me so much anxiety. I would totally defeat the purpose, right? So I definitely wouldn't do that for self-care. And if I did do that, it would be more like it's out of necessity, you know. And if I did that, I must be sick or something. I don't know. But I would never pick that for self-care because that's really hard. But I might read or something, that's kind of checking out in a different way. So maybe I would do that. I do that. What am I saying? I do that every freaking day. I do that. So, yeah. So I think it's those factors. And I mean, you can tell me what you think your factors are, but I think self-care is you're looking forward to it and you enjoy it. Of course, it doesn't hurt or harm anybody or yourself, Um, it is, if you don't feel like you can check out because that's too much anxiety, it could be something that you don't check out. And anything that gives you anxiety can't possibly be self-care, right? I mean, it can't be. So anxiety, if it gives you anxiety, it's not self-care. And I want to address this one thing. Some people, I could say I used to fall in this category, definitely, have a really hard time giving to themselves. They have kind of become, what is that like? When you're in such a state of depravity, you're doing it to yourself. Like you're not worth this. You're not worth that. You shouldn't have this. That's too good for you. I can't take the time out for self-care or to do anything fun. It's a self-deprivation thing that's happening. And some people definitely struggle with that. And I think that it's finding little tiny things and working up to maybe self-care that's more kind of include it bigger, but if you're somebody who has a hard time giving yourself something, then just start with something small. Like maybe you allow yourself to doodle at your desk when someone's talking to you on the phone, or when you're in a meeting, or maybe you allow yourself 20 minutes of just listening to music in headphones before you go to sleep, or, listening to a guided meditation, which is another thing that I do. I'm so obsessed with meditation because it is glorious, glorious. You have to try it out. Just that space of pure love is so addicting and wonderful. Anyway, that's side note on meditation, which we'll talk about later in another podcast. But I think that it shouldn't bring you anxiety. It should be something you're looking forward to and you enjoy. So if you don't enjoy any things that are, gender specific, you can do something that isn't. Like for me, I would really enjoy probably building something with perfect conditions. Like I have all the wood I need. I have, everything perfect. I'm just putting it together. I have a game plan. I've got all the right tools to put the things together and the right things to put the things together, like screws or whatever. And I'm just going to go out and create something cool I've been thinking about for a long time or something like that. So it can be a task, I guess, but it can't bring you any anxiety, and you have to be looking forward to it. So it can't be like, I used to think things like, well, I'm going to fix the latch on the kitchen window, and that was self-care. No, that was a chore I was doing. That was a task because I was not looking forward to it. It was just a task, right? So I think those are the big things with self-care. And I think that you don't have to do what everybody else is considering self-care. I'm sure there's things that are, that a lot of people do. I know my sister does things like makes tinctures, and she dyes cloth, and she does all these really incredible works of art, and that must be her self-care. She also takes her dog for a walk. I do the same. Sometimes taking a dog for a walk has a lot of anxiety associated with it. And then that day, that task might not be self-care. But one day you might go and just totally enjoy it. And it's like the perfect moment never. And then that's self-care. You're like loving nature and da-da-da. That's self-care. But I also think something you do for self-care one day cannot be self-care the next day if it brings you anxiety and anger. Your self-care, there should be no anger. It should just be like, wow, I love that. And then you go on, So, and I think everybody should engage in self-care. I think it's really, really important, I think self-care is also things like brushing your hair and taking a shower and, those basic things that you do to take care of your body and your mind, I think those are also self-care, but that's kind of in a different category. That's like self-care and maintenance. Yes. We all need to do those things, but maybe the fun self-care part has to do with, maybe you're going to wash your hair with really expensive, luscious products, and you have these little samples and for them. And that's self-care, your self-care. It's not just every day when you wash your hair. That's not self-care for the soul. So I'm talking about self-care for the soul, basically. But there's also just self-care and maintenance for, being healthy. That's a different kind of self-care that I'm talking about. I'm talking about self-care for the soul. What brings you joy? You have to find time in your life to really embrace that. And if you don't, you'll start going down this little hill and you won't realize you're going down the hill. And then one day you fall off a cliff. So little things that bring you joy, try to do that a couple times a week, and let me know how it goes and tell me what your self-care things are. And what do you think self-care is? I mean, talk for the soul, self-care, not care and maintenance, and maybe we can give each other some ideas about what might work. So anyway, that's my spiel on self-care. There's another podcast about self-care in the podcast, where you listen to podcasts like Spotify and whatnot. YouTube, not YouTube. This one's for YouTube, but Spotify and, iTunes and all that kind of stuff. So there's another one on there if you want to listen to more of my ramblings about self-care. But anyway, do some self-care today. Tell me what it is and how it's going. And even if you have hardships, just doing it for yourself. It's hard to be kind to yourself sometimes when you spend a long time not being kind to yourself. So that's totally understandable too. We've all been there. Or if we haven't been there, we will be there sometime in our lives. It's inevitable, if you're trying to be authentic. Anyway, have a good one, everybody. Know that I love you and I care about you and I'm here for you. And please tell me what you do. I'd love to hear it. So thank you so much.